Today we got Chris Meeken on from Black Tie Group. I actually know Chris personally. He's up in New Hampshire. But dude, today I feel like today's topic was all about delayed gratification. Like
Yeah.
that was the hot topic, and what I've said hot topic twice now, and every time I say it, I think of the store. Yes, because why not? Because that was my era. But we talk about delayed gratification in a lot of different ways, and the overall investment it takes to be great at something. Chris started, his adulthood in the Marines, and then went off to find his way into a bunch of different professions, including racing motocross, which is apparently cooler than riding a quad.
Definitely
But
cooler.
we'll leave that. We'll leave that there, and all the way to what is now a construction business that he runs and operates up in New Hampshire. This podcast is also brought to you by Andersen Windows. Andersen's goal is to craft something that lasts, something that stands the test of time, and they've been crafting that legacy for 120 years, making quality products for craftsmen and women like us and like our listeners. So whatever it is you want to be known for, Andersen can help you achieve it. I've talked about my legacy and what I want to be known for in the grand scheme of this, and I continue to refine what that is. And I just want to build cool stuff with cool people. And right now that's homes. And recently I realized that it might not always be homes, but for right now it will be. The other part of that legacy is I want to be an advocate for our industry, home builders, contractors, the blue collar person. And I want to be an advocate by sharing my stories and conversations through this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for myself, I can agree, and that would be a testament that I would also support. For myself, at the end of each project, I want to be able to turn something over that I'm proud of and that I understand is going to last and stand the test of time. I want to be able to create really durable projects and products for customers, which obviously aligns with Andersen. And I know that on one of our first trips out there, seeing their building and how they took part of their original building that they had moved from across the river, and then it's still part of their building today, really spoke to me as far as how they're preserving that heritage and preserving that craft and that legacy. So that's something that I can definitely get behind. But yeah, I want to be an advocate for this industry, and I want to create products and build relationships that I can stand behind and that really hold up to time.
So, with that being said, Andersen is there for us to be a collaborator with support that makes it all possible. And Andersen can play a part in your legacy. See the difference for yourself at andersenwindows.com/pros. Well, with that being said, guys, let's get into it. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Buildertrend. If you're into maximizing savings, then you've got to hear about Buildertrend's exclusive construction rebates program in collaboration with Ferguson.
I'm hoping that this ad read is better than last week because I was struggling last week on this. So
I
I'm
hope
hoping that
he edited.
I'm hoping that we're doing our partners and our sponsors justice here. Ferguson's a national distributor providing expertise, solutions, and products for plumbing, lighting, HVAC, fire, fabrication, and more.
So picture this. Every project you manage in Buildertrend not only gets completed on time and on budget, but you also get the fantastic rebates when you buy in-store or online at ferguson.com and build.com.
It's a no-brainer. Boost your project's efficiency and watch the savings roll in.
Ready to revolutionize your construction business? Well, visit buildertrend.com/MC rebates to unlock exclusive rebates with every project. Build smarter and save bigger with Buildertrend and Ferguson. By the way, who drew that?
The guy out of Canada.
A guy out of Canada just made you a cartoon?
Yeah. Oh, or know of Garrett or Life of Bub or whatever on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
He's out of Maine. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it was. I think it was him had his stickers made, and it was just some weird some graphic artist out of Canada. So I just reached out
That's cool.
and was like, "Hey," and he's like, "Oh, I'd love to do it." So it was pretty quick.
That's cool.
He's like he works for like a cartoon studio or something.
I'm being interviewed for an article, and part of the article is they have to draw a cartoon of me, and literally like at 2:57, Catherine was like, "I cannot wait to see your cartoon." I was like, they asked me to fill in like what I want to be wearing and stuff. I'm like, I don't know, a
Yeah,
black t-shirt.
yeah,
And
yeah. I think you
she's
kind
like,
of like.
you gotta. She's like, you gotta make sure that they have a Starbucks venti cold brew with a double shot in your hand. I
Well,
was
that
like, oh,
like
that's fair.
yeah. We had our like first Frenchie then, and like I think I just got my sleeve like finished, so I was like, oh, let's just put it all in.
Wait, do you have
Kind
two
of fun.
Frenchies?
Yeah, yeah.
Why
Levi
does
and Lola.
everyone? Wait, I'm gonna make the whole podcast
Go
about
ahead.
why everyone that has a Frenchie
Let's do it.
has to have two. Why? Like why?
Why two? Because
Why? But
they're
it's
small and
just
easy. It's just well, I mean, why do you have 5 kids? I don't know. It's like,
I have 4 kids. um,
but
no,
they
but it's all.
honestly they don't
I mean,
come
I
with you
have
to
two
work every
dogs.
day. Yeah,
I have two, like I get that, but everyone that has a Frenchie
that's two.
always gets a second one.
It's like your first child. I think they're like perfect. Like, oh my god, these are amazing. Like, let's get another one. And then our second one's an alien. So, and not quite the
I do,
same. Yeah.
I do think that they're kind of alien looking dogs, but
Yes.
I
Yeah.
feel like our
that is,
first child wasn't good until she wasn't a child anymore. It was
I hear
like
you.
she was a pain in the ass until she was 5, and then
Yeah.
she finally started sleeping.
It definitely gets better.
wait, you mean your first or second? Isn't Tilly?
First, yeah,
Isn't
but like
I
they
thought Tilly was?
switched. Selby was a really really difficult baby,
Uh,
and then they kind of switched, and like Tilly was a phenomenal baby, and then when she became a little bit like entered toddler age, she has always been extremely spicy since then, and like Selby's good.
It's so
Um,
funny how different their personalities are.
yeah, so definitely was not the case of like first kid was not perfect. I always thought I'd have 3 kids, and then we had Selby, and I was like, I could have one kid. I think I could
Hmm.
do one. It's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not always easy. How are you guys doing?
You're up in New Hampshire.
Yeah. We had early release today for snow, so that jacked up my day a little bit, but all
how
good. I
much
had
snow
to.
did you guys get?
We didn't get a ton, a couple 3 inches, but just enough to mess with the school buses.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
then they shut them down, and yeah,
we have a snow day here.
that
Do
I
you?
prefer.
Yeah, and they had off yesterday. I mean, we probably got like we didn't get that much, but it turned to rain, so
Yeah.
everything's icing.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
what
I,
Uh,
that's what it's doing right now in Boston. It's just it woke up to flurries, and I just went out and got a coffee, and it's raining and turning into ice.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
like you need more rain down there. I looked at
oh my
the
gosh.
seaport. What a mess.
But it's flooding up in New Hampshire too.
Oh yeah, like north, 20 minutes, like
Yeah.
Plymouth, and yeah, not too far from me,
Hampton
but
Beach,
not here.
Hampton, the drone footage of Hampton Beach
It's
was
gross.
insane.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler, did you see it? Did I send it to you?
nope.
It
We've
like,
been
everything, the whole I don't know what part of it, but it was just, like, hundreds of homes just surrounded by water.
Mm.
It looked like these homes popped up out of the ocean. It was
Did,
insane.
did you see the heating and plumbing guy driving through it? What an ad
No.
he's gonna have! It was
Oh
like a
my
fully
god.
lettered van, like I have to look it up, but
And you
like
know they're replay
driving
that, like,
right through the
100
water to
times.
help some. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, that's going to be on their next advertising
yeah,
campaign.
that's
what
funny.
you guys have just been getting slammed with rain, Nick. You
Yeah, I
got snow
mean,
too.
Yeah.
not I mean, I don't think it's been anything abnormal. I actually, for the first time, Googled it the other day. I'm like, why is everything flooding?
Mm,
Because it's not normal, at least to my knowledge, for Castle Island to be completely submerged underwater,
right. Yeah.
for the seaport to have like standing water up against the building. Like, it's a lot of water. And then you
Hmm.
see Hampton Beach. Hampton Beach gets hammered when there's a nor'easter, but the whole, like, everything was buried, like, just completely underwater. And then you look at Portland, Maine, it was the
Oh
same
yeah.
thing.
If it
So
was, I think it should be
it's I
snow, and
don't
there's
know.
nowhere for the water to go. The ground's frozen. Especially around here, it should be
But it's
snow.
for us, but the
Yeah.
ground's not frozen around here. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
I went down a rabbit hole, and I'm like, this is just bananas.
Yeah.
But then
It's the same thing around here. We've been getting a lot of rain, just consistently, and I don't know if like it's not draining or what's going on. But I thought it was just like our yard, and I realized that everything just so soft, like the
Mm-hmm.
ground's fully saturated. And then I started to pay attention to it, and I was driving around town, and it's like people's entire front yards are just
Mm-hmm.
underwater right now.
Yeah.
And
Golf
Like a mini
courses.
pond.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like, but I never noticed it, and I'm driving
Mm.
down the road, and I'm like, their whole front yard's underwater. Their whole front yard's underwater. Um, I don't know what's called. I guess maybe it's just not warm enough for water to be
So,
evaporating out of the soil, or what the deal is.
someone's gonna message us
Oh
on
yeah,
Instagram and be like, "You guys are idiots. This is how
global
groundwater
warming.
works."
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like like this will go away. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of community boards on Facebook that we're in based on where we build, just so we can monitor stuff. And one of them wasn't our job; it was blaming the builder next door. It's like, I've lived here for 30 years, my backyard's never flooded, and they just built this new house next door, and it's the developer's fault. And it's like, no, it's pretty much everywhere that's flooding like this. It's not just your backyard, and it's certainly
Right.
not because they built a house next to you. But
Bad
um,
timing.
very bad timing. Yeah, very bad timing. Chris, so
Yeah.
we obviously know each other.
Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of hanging out with you, getting some pizza at Giuseppe's up in New
New
Hampshire.
Hampshire. Yep. Checking out my wife
Um,
performing. Yep. You
yeah,
haven't
well,
gone
my
though.
wife is.
Yeah.
I
Megan. Yeah.
haven't. My
Yeah.
Meg and Marley have.
Yeah.
They love it there, by the way. Like
It's a great
Every
place.
time we go up, they're like, "There's another show."
Mm-hmm.
And so I was gonna start with you, but let's start with your wife. So
Okay.
does she perform? Why don't you give me a rundown of what she does?
Yeah. So she went to performing arts school in Natick called Walnut Hill, and then went to CCM or Cincinnati Conservatory of Music, and then lived in New York City for a little bit, trying to get on Broadway as they all do, and ended up getting some contracts to go on cruise ships, and did the professional cruise ship thing for 3 or 4 years. And then after that, it was kind of like, where do I go from here type of thing.
Mm.
Ended up moving back home, and then opened a dance studio. So she's had that for 11 or 12. I think she's on her 12th year running that. Um, and then during the summers and when she gets a break, she'll perform locally at a professional theater. 1 or 2 shows a year. Sometimes I wish it was just one, but it's her passion, so we deal with it.
Hold on, 1 or 2 shows a year, but that show plays like
She's like
a
between,
handful of times, right?
yeah, 17 or 18, and then there's like 2 or 3 weeks
Yeah,
of rehearsal plus whatever. So I mean, it's a month to a month and a half. She was almost the entire month of December. She was in rehearsal or show.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. It's intense.
New Year's Eve
Um,
she wrapped up at like 5 o'clock.
they performed New Year's
Yeah.
Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
is
Day
that
show.
might have been when Meg and Marley went
Yes. Yeah. Pretty sure.
during the day. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Well, Chris, your background, you're a Marine or
Mm-hmm.
was a Marine, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We always say still are, but yes. Yep.
Still
Former
are.
Marine. Yeah.
Former Marine. How long did you serve?
4 years.
And
Yeah.
what did you do for the
Hold
Marine?
on, time out. How did you guys meet?
New Hampshire.
Did we meet
But
at?
like, did you know? Was it just like you guys met in New Hampshire? Or you knew of each other, and then when Nick was up in New Hampshire, decided to get together.
I either
That's a
met
great
you
question.
at IBS or JLC. I think you were speaking and you mentioned something about being in Guilford or somewhere. And I just went up to you and was like, hey, local contractor, blah, blah, blah. And then we just kind of connected from there.
I think it was. I think it was in. I think it was when I was speaking with Buildertrend at IBS.
Probably, yeah. Yep. Which is part of, we can go into that later, just about, I was thinking about like, what are we going to talk about and what do I kind of have to say? And there's just the idea of relationships and how that gets you where you are in some way or shape or form. But we can, dig back into that.
Well, so to answer your question, Tyler, I think at one point we had met briefly, and I had then started talking about working in New Hampshire, and you actually had messaged me and said, "Hey, if you're going to come up in New Hampshire, let me know. I'd love to
do something.
you
Yeah,
know, collaborate."
Sure.
And I actually remember this. I flagged it in my Instagram inbox because I have a terrible like organization. And I was like, I need to remember to come back to Chris because I know we're going to be up there. And I remember getting the call about the New Hampshire job, and I feverishly looked through my tech because I didn't know who it was. Like at the
Yeah.
time, like you
Yeah.
and I hadn't really known each other well enough.
Yeah.
I'm just like I know someone said something about New Hampshire, and I'm going through all like I'm not saying I get a ton of messages, but enough to like not know where this message was.
Sure. Of course.
And I want to say it was around the similar time when Instagram made the update that you can search the body of a message. And I realized that, and I typed in New Hampshire, and you popped up, and I was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I got this project up in New Hampshire. I want to chat." And at that point, we were going up to the cabin every so often, and I think we were up there, and I had messaged you, and I was like, "Hey, do you guys want to get dinner?"
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and you and Ashley came and met us for dinner with my maniac
Brood.
children,
Yeah.
and yeah,
It was
and
fun. It was fun.
it
Yeah.
was, yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny. You guys were like, "We don't have the kids this weekend. Let's go hang out with 4 other kids."
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. So that's the.
Um, and that was it. And then
Mhm.
we connected, and you actually came to our the coalition summit.
Yeah.
Um,
That was great. Yep.
which one? You came to Austin, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
Well, I'll
it's the
go
last
again.
one.
Yep. Yeah. It was good.
Um, and then we've just stayed in touch since.
Hmm. Yep.
I was
Does that
wondering.
answer the?
Yeah, I was
Does
just
that
trying to
answer?
figure it out.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah. Tyler and I have chatted a couple things on dirt bikes on Instagram, and yeah.
hell yeah.
Do you want
I
to?
was trying to put the pieces together on my own, and I was like, I don't know. I didn't realize you guys knew each other.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
not that I would. And then I was gonna usually when I'm like trying to do a little bit of background work, I'm like, all right, Nick,
The
either you
stalking.
or I knows this yeah, where it's
Yeah.
like somebody knows this person, if somebody set this guest up trying to figure out, and I just like, I don't know, I didn't do it today. And then I was like, damn, they know each other, and I didn't know that they knew each other.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah.
So
It's rare that we get a guest that neither of us know.
no.
So if it and when it does, like, it never really pans out. But Chris, when we had met, we had talked about like just your background, as a Marine, how that has led you into entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
And at one point, your business was catered around. So you're up near the lakes region, which
Yeah.
is Lake Winnipesaukee,
Hmm.
is that primary lake up in New Hampshire. That a lot of your work is surrounded. But you had started the company. Correct me if I'm wrong, but really on the home care / home maintenance
Concierge.
side
Yeah.
side of things,
Hmm. Hmm.
concierge.
Hmm.
I, I'd love to just unpack that from when you started, why you started in that space, and then we'll get to the fact that you've kind of moved away from that a little bit into more of a general contracting and construction company.
Yeah. It backs up a little bit before that. My uncle is in construction, has been, still is, a builder not far from actually where I live. And then as a kid, and this speaks to the whole thing of trade that you guys discuss all the time. When I was younger, I wanted to go to a trade school. Like that's all I wanted to do. I've always been interested in it. And then I kind of got the push into, a private college prep, high school, um, enrolled in college at Salem State. And then I think I didn't attend maybe a single class, but I was enrolled for 6 months.
Yes.
I just wasn't into it. So
Yes.
I just went, at that point, I just signed up for the Marines. Like I didn't really tell my family. I grew up in a little bit rough neighborhood and upbringing. I was just like, I'm out of here. So on like January 3rd, I went to boot camp out of Boston, MEPS. And
Why the Marines? Was there like a recruiter knocking on your door?
there, no, my uncle was in the Air Force. We didn't have an Air Force recruiter in town. We had a Navy, an Army, and a Marines one. And I actually went to the Army one first. And then my uncle was like, not a chance. He's like, if you're doing it, do it right. I'm like, okay.
Damn.
So I just went in and, yeah, I mean, definitely the best decision I ever made. And to your point, yeah, it definitely set some foundation of confidence and, all the things you need when you're a, shell of a human at 17 or whatever years old with no self-confidence and no direction. So
Why did you initially think Army?
they were the closest recruiter to my front door. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know if I had, I don't know if it was, I don't know, but I just felt like that would be a challenge, And I think
Yeah.
Were you gonna
growing,
say that you didn't know if you'd have the ability to be a Marine, but felt as though Army you
oh,
could do?
no, I didn't even think, I guess I didn't do the research on the Marine part of it. I didn't want to
Mm,
go in the Navy, which is funny because I ended up basically in the Navy. I ended up in a special ops group, and all I did was live on a ship and ride Zodiacs and swim in the ocean at night. So I don't, it's ended up, it's just funny how it goes. Um, and even in the Marines, I didn't know that there were any other jobs than what I was doing. I thought that's what we all did. So just interesting. Then I get out
I
and I'm like, oh, there's totally different jobs. Yeah. So
So what was the goal other than getting out? What was the and I at 17, 18 years old, I don't know how much foresight you have, but like what was the idea as a 17 or 18-year-old that you were going to join the Marine Corps? What was the future looking like in your eyes? Like what was the next move? Was it to stay in the Marine Corps? Was this just the only decision and there was nothing planned ahead of this, or what was the idea with joining the Marine Corps?
yeah, I just felt like it'd be better than what I was doing or in. So like, let's try something different. I was always a bit of a risk taker, I guess. I think it's part of like not really caring whether or not, what the safety of your own life. You're like, yeah, whatever. I really don't care. So it was like, let's
Yeah.
just go do something. And then, yeah, you grow with that. And even, part of the programming and all the things in the Marines, you still become this like kind of, not robot, but very compartmentalized. You're not really worried about your own safety. It's more about, people to your left and right and getting the mission accomplished. Um, and it has served me well. I know Nick's talked about, the willingness to take a risk and just doing whatever it takes. And like, that was actually legitimately our company motto, was whatever it takes. And I use it as a tagline in my stuff. Like, we don't just do our best, we do whatever it takes. And I think
Yeah.
it's that relentless, the thing with that is, the travel and perspective. You are faced with all of these challenges that you learn to overcome. And then, when normal life happens, we're out of hot water or the heat's out. It's like, yeah, well, I've been through worse and we can get through this. And
mm.
um, I think in our industry where it's so, we can plan as much as we can, but things change and this, my base is just like, yeah, we're doing fine. We're in construction. We're enjoying our lives. Like, we can get through this. It's not it
Yeah.
won't be the end of us. Yeah.
What was the experience like as a 18-year-old in boot camp? Were you like down for the experience immediately, or were you like, I should have stick with the Army?
Yeah. I didn't, it was tough. Yeah. I'd say the first boot camp was brutal. It gets a little better. Like, they have a really smart program, and I would love to know who the psychologist is that figured it out. But the way they break you down and make nobody's an individual anymore. It's all a team, and then they slowly build you back up so that you're not afraid of everything.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, they put you out to infantry training. So there's another 6 months of kind of nonsense, and then they send you to a unit based on whatever your qualifications are, which sounds like I could swim and run. So that's what I ended up with, this unit that did that primarily.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
my one of
okay.
my best friends growing up was like gung ho about joining the Marine Corps. It was after 9/11. He wanted to go active
mm,
infantry. Went in, and then I actually went down to his graduation down there, and it was being 18, being around that. It's scary. Like,
yeah,
honestly, even just seeing the way that like they do break you down and everyone's the same and they look the same and they talk the same and act the same. And I remember going to get food afterwards, and there was like a Marine who had just graduated, and literally dropped everything he was doing and ran to open the door for somebody, and it was like they were trained like dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just it took a long time to even have, like, a conversation with my buddy that like, I got a glimpse of what he was like before that, because they
Mm-hmm.
had just changed him so much, and I just recall it being, like, very frightening to me that, like, this is this kid that had known my whole life, and he just spent, what is it, 12 weeks or something like
Mm-hmm.
that there, and I'm like, and he's completely different, like,
Yeah,
completely changed. Even just talking to him, it was like not the same person. A very,
for sure.
very interesting experience to see that firsthand.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And for some, I'm in a group chat with 12 of my Marine Corps buddies, and we talk every single day. And we didn't know half of our backgrounds when we were in. And then,
Mm.
until Facebook and other ways of communicating and people retiring and getting out, we've all kind of reconnected. And to, to hear where, somebody grew up in Alabama or, you know, just in another place that wasn't really good, kind of living in the trailer park, or another kid, a couple friends out of Boston. And so we're kind of spread out between Arizona, California, Hawaii, Boston, Kentucky. And so we kind of get a cut of the country on what's going on socially and economically, and talking about our different lives. But they've all gone on to do really good things with their lives after. And
Yeah.
it's,
Mhm.
there's a lot of success stories out of that experience, and they probably would not have gotten out of some of those areas. So yeah.
The training side of it, Chris, it's interesting to hear you say, like, that you'd love to understand who wrote that program, like the psychologist behind it, because that's what I find the most fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had read Goggins' book,
Mm-hmm.
and listening to him talk about, is it Buds? Is that what it's
Yeah.
called?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
listening to him talk about that, and he talks about it in a way where, he's getting screamed at, and he would just sit there and smile,
Mm-hmm.
and he would laugh, and he'd be like, and he would go through it, and he goes on to relate it to running, and how he would be running for 100 miles, and his foot would be broken or bleeding, and he'd be shitting himself and throwing up, and he's like, I still get 70% in the tank.
Yeah.
And literally I remember, like, that, like, dead truth, after reading that book, is why I end up running the first marathon I ran. Is like, that this is bullshit. Like, I'm I can do this. And,
Oh,
and
for sure.
it was terrible. And I was actually telling the story the other day. Is I remember my first one, I came through, I'm probably at like mile 20 or 21, and I started crying. And I'm not a crier. I don't cry. Like, I can't remember the last time I've cried. And I had no control over it. And I'm running, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And I had realized, like, later on, I was like, I got to a point where I didn't want to do this anymore. And I remember I kept telling myself, like, yeah, but it's going to be over soon. Eventually
Right.
this will be over. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember crossing that finish line and taking a deep breath, and grabbing a water, and it was like, okay, that wasn't that bad. Even though it had sucked, like, even
Yeah.
though
Oh,
it
yeah.
was
Yeah.
absolutely terrible,
Mm-hmm.
but, like,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's over now. It's done. And I think that, and I think a lot about the training, it's something I kind of wish I experienced, because the to go through um that process of being broke, like, beaten down, and pushed down so far that it's basically trying to find your breaking point, but being in that situation, and having to remind yourself that this isn't going to kill me.
Right.
Like, there eventually will be another side to this.
Mm-hmm.
um and interestingly, do you know the MDK project, Modern Day Night?
No.
So it's, I forget the guy's name, but I came across it on Instagram a couple months ago, and it's a 75-hour crucible,
Ooh.
that it's essentially, it's like military training, and they just beat the absolute crap out of you and see if you can survive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know one of the kids that had ran one of the recent ones, and I was talking to him about it, and he goes, "It's crazy. It's it's extremely expensive to go. Like
Yeah, it was like
it's
the
like I
Ruck Go
want to say
Ruck series thing that they were doing for a bit.
I'm not familiar with that one, but
But yeah,
I'm watching the content behind it, and it's like these guys are climbing up the hillside and dragging them back down to the bottom, and be like, do it again, and don't stand up.
yeah,
And I'm watching it like, man, this would be an insane like mental challenge, and
yeah,
and I shared it with one of my friends, and he's like, why would you ever do that
And
yeah.
pay for it.
And pay.
and
Well, I mean,
pay
it's
for
like
it?
the Spartan stuff, right? Everyone, the supers, the ultras, the whatevers, and it's like, how many times can we run up and down Killington, Vermont, in a whatever
Right?
many period? It's like, I think you just want to see, what you're capable of,
Yeah.
and then you overcome it, and you're like, oh, I can do that now. So yeah,
It's just,
yeah,
I don't know. It's super interesting to me. Like you talk about how you were at a point in your life as a kid, right? That you were you were growing up and you felt as though I have nothing to lose. I'm just gonna go do this thing because if
mm,
something happens, who gives a shit?
right,
To being pushed into a zone of you know extreme self-respect and coming out the other side of it where it's okay, I've officially hit what is probably considered my bottom, and now I've built back up and I'm higher than I was.
yeah, 100%, yeah.
It is that so with that, like 4 years you served, you got out, and did you go straight into business?
No, I went somewhere in the middle of that. I became infatuated with the whole dirt bike scene because I was in Southern California. So I think 6 months before I got out, I bought a 1998 YZ250. It was my first dirt bike, brand new,
Hell yeah.
had never ridden, and I spent more time crashing that thing than anything.
Pretty much the same bike still.
Yes, yeah,
You can you
um,
still buy a two-stroke bike, or have they
yeah,
stopped
Yeah.
manufacturing?
yeah,
Oh, you can. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
So
Definitely. I mean,
they're change so right around that time, like late 90s, early 2000s, they switched, like, motocross racing switched to four strokes,
mhm,
just because they're easier to ride.
the
They
Doug
made
Henry
some
era.
ruling Yeah, they, like, made some rulings with like, a two-stroke produces more power, but it's not necessarily more usable power, so they allowed bigger four strokes to ride with smaller two strokes, and the four stroke
Mhm,
bikes were better anyway. So the two stroke, like, most of the companies stopped investing money in them because money's in motocross.
mhm,
Um, but like the four stroke bikes are more expensive to buy, more expensive to maintain. So there's only a couple of companies, like some companies, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Honda, just stopped making two strokes entirely. And then like the KTM brand continues to make them and update them. But Yamaha just makes the same bike for the past like 25
Mhm,
years. Like they just keep putting it out and they don't change it. And it's kind of the only bike left of its kind, that's just like a straight carbureted, vibrating, manic, on the pipe, off the pike two stroke that,
mhm.
like, very simple bike, and people love it. Like, people race them all the time still off road because they're cheap to buy, they're easy to get parts for, they're cheap to fix, and they're great
Lighter.
bikes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the
Um,
mud in the woods and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, so, the bike that he had, realistically, if you bought a new one today, is not that much different, but they're still, like, great bikes.
mm.
Mhm.
So you got into racing, or were you on
Yeah. So
the
I moved back. I was actually going to go to, there was a tech school in Phoenix, Arizona, like MMI or something, to become like a mechanic for a back to the trades thing. I'm like, oh, I'll go be a mechanic and work for one of these race teams. And then I came home for like when I got out, it was right around Christmas time. I think I came home December, and my they call it end of service EAS was January 3rd. So I came home, and then I just never really went back, I did some like private security work in Boston, and then ended up getting a job at a power sports dealership in New Hampshire. So I moved up here to take that job, and I worked there for, I don't know, like 15 years or something. Did all sort, and that was like everything from, I started off just like, I think in the parts room, and then it was like, all right, you can do this. You have the skill set to do this. So I just started like, okay, now you're the parts manager. Now you're the service manager. Now you're the whatever operations manager. But in that time, I was racing dirt bikes and snowmobiles basically every weekend, training 2 days a week. It was like, I thought that would be my entire life. Like I was trying to qualify for a national. I was trying to, make money with snowcross. You can run pros and make some money back, which is a joke because you spend more money than you make. But so that was a whole big section of my life. And then, some personal things changed that. I was a cop for a little bit. There was a whole bunch of little things in there. But I got kind of recruited by some other companies for operations management and some consulting. And I was like, oh, like I have some value here outside of just being, working for this company that I've worked for however many years and seeing no end in sight. So I got hired to run what was a new fitness. It was like a obstacle course racing place in Tilton. So the guy said basically, like, if you want to build this and run this and create this, it's yours. So I started this whole thing called the Loft. And then after that went to another fitness place, more boutique-y, where I had, 10 or 15 group classes and then personal training. And I did that for another 4 or 5 years. And then I would train snowcross guys like on the side and travel around doing that. So, construction, go ahead.
Yeah, I was
How do we get
that was
there?
actually a big question for me when I was looking up your background. I'm like, I'm just trying to figure out where the hell the construction came at this point.
Yeah.
But I also didn't understand the full power sports aspect. But what is it about, or what was it about riding the dirt bikes and racing and snowmobiles and all that essentially shifted your focus and mindset so much that you were willing to try and make a career out of that at all costs?
I think, as you know, and probably Nick too, like there's this like freeing thing where, our brains, and I'm speaking for you guys, so you can correct me, but like our brains are so busy, and it's like the only time my brain ever shuts off that, without some other, alcohol or whatever. Like you're on a dirt bike, the only thing that you're focused on is that. It's like the next turn, the next shift. Am I, weighting the foot pegs correctly? Am I doing this? Oh, the next jump. Am I going to hit this 100-footer? There's this guy on the inside of me, are we going to scrub this? Like your brain is so focused. There's no room for anything else. And I think, not that it's a bit of escapism, but it's like your own therapy. It's your own therapist. It's like, you people search for that feeling everywhere, and it's there anytime you start the bike or get on the snowmobile.
Yeah, it's which is the more people you talk to, you find out that it's the same thing that it does for everyone. And I think people are either wired for it or not wired for it. And that, like, even my kids ask me, because for a long time I didn't ride dirt bikes. It was like when we were younger, we had a couple, and they were just like beat up little trail bikes that were inexpensive that we could putz around on, go to like a sand pit. And then, there was 5 of us. So my dad would be able to afford like one bike, and we would go out for an afternoon and just like take turns on them. But I can recall even being younger and wanting like dirt bike toys or like everything related dirt bikes, and then it just like never crossed my mind again until later in life. for better or for worse, but then getting back into it, it's like the same thing, like you said. And even if you're spinning laps on a motocross track, it's the track is not the same as the lap before. So everything that you did the lap before, you have to change and you have to alter. And there's so many of these tiny little nuanced details and complexities that if you sleep on it, you either get hurt or you just don't execute the way that you have to.
Mm-hmm.
And for me,
Mm-hmm.
it is like it's the escapism, it's the flow state that you get into, but it's also the extreme focus that it requires 100% of the time, that it's like you are absolutely forced to fully engage. And when it goes well, there's really not much of a better feeling.
100%. Yeah. And yeah.
It,
And it's also the
it,
most freeing.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
it can be very frustrating at times too when it's like not going right. It does the opposite. And then for me, it's like I just want to get back out there to prove to myself that, like, yeah, that was because of this or that, and that I can do it and I can correct it, and then we can keep moving forward. There's obviously the physical aspect of it as well,
Yeah.
where you're physically exercising and you have those endorphins and everything else. But like I feel like most people in their life at some point should get on a dirt bike or a snowmobile and just like go out on your own and figure it out and spend time doing that. I think that it teaches a lot of responsibility. It teaches accountability, and I really think that like it is a huge stress and anxiety reliever.
Mm.
I think, I mean, everyone's different in the sense you talk to people that just want to sit down and chill, or like I think about I'm thinking about the sauna and things like that where I can't, like I love sitting in a sauna, but I
Mm-hmm.
can't sit there for that long. Like people are like,
Oh,
oh, I sit there in for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And and I can't, for whatever reason, I just can't be left alone doing nothing with my thoughts for that long. I start thinking
I
about
hear you.
like, when is the 20 minutes going to be up? And oh my God, it's only been two. And now it's been 2.5 and two. And, but the complete opposite is like what you guys are talking about, the adrenaline side of it, where it's, if something's adrenaline inducing like that, exactly my mind escapes all of my
Mm-hmm.
thoughts.
Yeah.
I've talked about it before, but I remember when I bought that C10 a couple years ago. I
So
bought
I was
a
gonna say.
67
Mm-hmm.
C10, and I remember for months I had neck pain, and it was like I felt like my shoulders were stuck up against my my jawline, and I kept stretching it out every day, stretching my neck, and I'm like, man, my neck hurts so much. And I remember buying that truck got delivered, and I hopped in it and I took my daughter out and we went and got ice cream or something like that. And I came home and I'm sitting at the counter. I get this shitty grin in my face. And I said, and I all of a sudden my face changed. And my wife's like, "What's up?" I'm like, "My neck pain's gone." She goes, "Oh, you think the truck did that?" I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it did." She goes, "How? Like, what do you mean?" I'm like, I think that for the first time in months, I was able to actually like not think about things and just enjoy that very moment.
100%.
And
Yeah.
I think that that's what you're talking about. Like you're chasing that feeling where it's something that I think, especially for me, I can speak for myself, is that I forget that that feeling's important just in
Mm-hmm.
life, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like we get so caught up in work where we just want that opportunity to escape it for a moment.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
does it. Yeah.
I was out on Sunday. I was supposed to ride with the buddy, and the weather just didn't look good, so we kind of pushed it off. And then I had a
Mm.
feeling he was going to bail, and nobody else was going out. So I was like, I'm going out by myself. It started to snow, not bad, just flurries, but it was cold. It was like 35 degrees. And I was like, I'm just going to go out because I know that my week will be incredibly better if I go out and do this.
Mm.
And I was like, it was late in the afternoon on Sunday. It gets dark, it's cold. I was like, I'm just going to go out and hammer for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and see how many miles I can put down. And I'm out in the middle of the woods by myself. And when you're riding by yourself, you're not going to test your limits as much.
Of
So like,
course.
I'm
Yeah.
not riding at the top of my level, but like I'm pushing myself as far as I safely can and taking less breaks and like seeing what my stamina looks like. And I remember wrapping up my ride and just like for 1 second I came out of my own like just zone that I was in and thought about everything that was happening all at once as far as like clutch control, body control, throttle control, all the trees that were around me, the bumps, my suspension. And I was like, holy shit, there's a lot going on right now at this time, especially going like 20 miles an hour through
Mm,
trees. And I was like, holy shit, this is so sick. And I just like
yeah.
smiled. I rode back, parked in my truck, and I just like sat there for a few minutes and was so glad that I went out. And I just it's been hard to find anything that gives me like that adrenaline surge, the high, but also makes me feel good doing it. Cause most of the shit in my life that I did that made me feel that free, I regretted so
Right.
much the next day. And I was like, this is so bad for me. I shouldn't be doing this. And other than like the financial burden of riding dirt bikes, it does not make me feel like a piece of shit.
Right. No, that's definitely true. I love to dig into the thought of, when you talk about all the things you're doing and all the inputs that you're taking in, and then you think about like an F1 driver or a Ricky Carmichael or James Stewart, and how their brains and eyes and bodies process. Like, if they strapped you to that motorcycle or in that F1 car, like, I don't know that you would even be able to comprehend the amount of
No.
inputs that they do. So that is a fun thing to think about when you think about psychology
Mm.
in our brains and your tolerance for things. And like, listening to you guys, and like, Nick's tolerance for stress or risk maybe versus yours, Tyler, where it's like I would don't want to do that. And my wife will say that to me all the time. She's like, I could not live my life like you do. She's like, I would die. The amount
Yeah.
of chaos that you are okay with would never work
Yeah.
for me. So we're all kind of, it's just interesting. And then
It is.
yeah,
It's especially when you consider, right, that like you could get on like everyone on a dirt bike, everyone in a car, his dirt bike's not faster than yours. Like
right.
take another factory, like everyone can twist the throttle, right? You look at like these guys who are the fastest drivers in the world and like on a basic level, like if they put you in that car, you could stomp the pedal just as hard as they could stomp the pedal. But what are they doing
Mhm.
differently to be able to harness all of that? And that's
Mm,
where all the training and the stamina and like the risk tolerance and all that comes into place. Because there's times where I'm riding and I'm like, I just cannot imagine how people are making it through here faster
right.
than
Yeah.
this right now. And it's like
Hmm.
there's people who are twice as fast, and it's like I
Mhm.
don't even get how you do it. And it's not that their dirt bike's faster, it's the same freaking dirt bike. They know how it's going to react,
Hmm.
and they trust it, and they trust themselves, and they have the seat time to be able to do that. And that's what's crazy to think about to me.
Yeah.
I think that's I mean, it's a similar perspective as we were talking about earlier, where it's you know, you're running and you feel like you can't go any further, but then someone finished that marathon 2 hours before you,
Yeah.
Right.
and it's
How?
like, well, I could never do that. It's like, but you could. The thing is like you just don't have the, as you say, the seat time.
Hmm.
You haven't
Hmm.
done this enough times,
Yeah.
and it's you know, anything that we do, it's like, I was chatting with someone yesterday about backflips, uh, completely random topic, but I came across this video. It's like, here's 4 steps you can do to learn how to
Yeah.
do a backflip. I'm like, I'm definitely not watching that because I will try to do a backflip and I know I won't be able to do it. But
Yeah.
there's a process, right? Like
Hmm.
eventually I could probably figure out how to do a backflip.
At
But
least on a
that
trampoline.
at least on a trampoline.
At
Hope
least. Yeah.
maybe more.
Yeah.
But the point is like that first time, that second time, third time, like it might be shit. And I think that as humans and everything that we do, we don't give ourselves enough time to get to the desired result. There's so much, like we're spending so much time trying and giving up. Where it's the F1 car example is great. Where it's like you watch those guys. If you get in that car, like you can't do a tenth of what they can do in that car.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, that person was in your position. They might have
Yeah.
been 6 years old, but like they at one point they were there. And it's just the amount of effort that we put into getting better and improving. And this is where, I don't know why I'm on such a self improvement kick for the last year, but it's I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And Tyler
Same.
and I, like, you know, Chris, you and I have chatted offline too, but
Yeah.
Tyler and I, like, we chat a lot of just like the things that we're doing, the input that we're putting into certain things, we're not getting the desired result. And at face value, it's like, that's not fair. Like, if we're putting the work in, why aren't we receiving the result? It's like, well, then we're not doing, like, there's something we're not doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we're missing a step, or we're not putting enough input. Like, yeah, we're putting a lot of input over time, but if I, if I drive that F1 car once a year for 20 years, it's like, I'm probably not going to get better. But
Yeah.
if I drive that F1 car every single day for 20 years, I'm probably going to be significantly better.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that, what the complete opposite side of that, and what's interesting to me is like the people that just don't have the desire to be better, and how someone can get to a point where they have no desire to live a very short life on this planet doing nothing, not
Right.
achieving anything. And and how do they slip into that side of it where it's like, nope, I don't want to do anything, I don't want to achieve anything, life sucks, like, and at the worst side of it, like, a drug addict
Mm-hmm.
that's on the street. It's like, I it's so interesting to me that that person is there. And I know that I know that I'm not going into the addiction conversation, but my point is, like, at one point there was a decision that was made that, compounded into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I can't help but to think, like, there has to be a time where they think to themselves, like, is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life?
Yeah. I've tried locally, and when I say tried, I haven't put a whole lot of effort, but I've definitely had 4 or 5 conversations around, I would love to get involved with some kids in our area that are in, maybe rough situations, and just be able
Mhm.
to say, hey, like, you've got options, and you can outgrow your parents at 12. You can, think differently. You can either follow in their footsteps, or you can make you can make a change. Like, I don't know why people get so stuck. Like, get out, go somewhere
Mhm.
else. Like, I've had it with employees that, oh, they have a, rough background or something. It's like, you don't need to continue to hang out with the same friends. You don't even need to stay in New
Yeah.
Hampshire. Go get a job.
Mhm.
Like, you've got a tool belt and a toolbox and a truck. Like, go drive to Florida and get a job. Get
Yeah.
yourself out of here so you're not in the same. But, there's, like you said, that unwillingness to do that.
I think you make a great point, though. I think that sometimes it takes someone to say that they have an option,
Mm-hmm.
because that is really powerful. Whereas if someone came up to me and said, "Hey, Nick, just so you know, you could do this thing," I would feel more encouraged to do that thing than me saying, like, "Hey, I can go be an F1 driver."
Mm.
It's like, that sounds a little ludicrous. If someone walked up to me and was like, "Hey, Nick, like, just so you know, like, based on what I know about you, you could be an F1 driver." I'd be like, "Oh, no shit." Maybe, like,
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
dedicate my life to it. But the point is like, you're absolutely right. I think that a lot of times the people that are stuck are because they're in an environment that hasn't offered them anything else, and it's
Yeah.
really hard to, you hear it all the time. It's like there's such a small percentage of people that outgrow their environment by themselves.
Right.
And oftentimes, and maybe it's not by themselves. Maybe it is Chris, pulling him aside and saying, "Hey, just so you know, you could do this thing."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I would say that there's people who are have a natural, just innate aptitude, or like predisposition to be that way. Like I feel personally that I have always been driven, and I've just had high standards in my life with regard to anything that I've done, right? If I'm going to do something, I typically don't settle. And I don't know if that's learned behavior or somebody sat me down and had a conversation when I was younger. I think that there's certain people that that maybe that conversation would be helpful to. I think it depends on the person. It depends on at what point. Like, is everyone ready for that conversation at 12 years old? Or are these
Mm.
kids who are in that position like this is their normal, this is what they want? You know, you want to please your parents, you want to make your parents proud, no matter how much they hurt you. Is this something that people are born with, or is this something that you experience something in your life, whether planned or not planned? Like potentially the Marine Corps was
Mm-hmm.
this shift for you that like you didn't know what your potential was, or who you could be, or that you potentially had outgrown your upbringing until you experienced something like that. Like, do you feel that you were without the Marine Corps or without that experience that you would be where you are today? Or was that somewhat of the catalyst for that?
I think I knew when I was younger, before the Marines, that I was kind of had outgrown, you know, some of my childhood or my, you know, my parents to an extent. Um, but that was a very good, I still wasn't very confident, like as a teenager. Like I just didn't, you know, aside from I ran cross country and indoor track, I found that sport like sophomore, junior year and happened to be innately good at that. Um, got I actually got a scholarship to Northeastern for cross country. I just didn't take it. Um, so yeah, I think, but still within that, I didn't have, you know, a lot of self confidence. So I think the Marines definitely gave me that to come out and be like, yeah, you can endure these things and do these things. You do feel a little bit invincible, you know. I mean, and that's kind of part of the program, you know.
So why do you feel you didn't take the opportunity to go run track in college?
I don't know. I think I was part of it was a little burnt out with the running thing because it seemed to be, you know, that pressure to either always win or just do that thing. And I didn't really feel like I wanted to continue to do that. And I didn't have really a direction. Like I didn't even know what I was going to go to college for. Like I took,
Yeah.
you know, gen ed, whatever. It's like I probably still would have gone to a trade school at that time. Um, but I, you know, I've always, you know, I remember my mom left me in my grandmother's kitchen when I was a kid, like under 6, and I took all the doors off the cabinets. Um, they came
Wait, did
back
they
and
know?
like, and all
They
the
didn't know you
cabinet
were doing
doors
it.
are just sitting in the kitchen floor. They're like, what? Like I found a little toolkit under the sink and just took them all off. And I remember taking stuff apart like that all the time, like TVs or radios, see what they, you know, how they worked. And like, you know, I think
Did you
that's
put
one
them
of
back together?
sometimes, yeah,
Hmm.
not
Yeah, I
more
took a
so
lot of stuff
now.
apart.
Yeah. But now it's
Yeah.
fun. Like you know, you have the confidence, right? Like I'll take apart a iPad screen or just send me the part. Like let's put it together. Or, and I
Yeah.
think that serves us all well in our industry where it's like I'm just a problem solver. Um, and that's kind of what we do, right? We just kind of solve problems.
Do you
What,
I look back at a lot of what I would say would be like critical junctures in my life, or you know, crossroads, so to speak. And I like to think about what I would do differently if I were in that position now. And even listening to your track story, and it's like, okay, so you're obviously good enough to get a college scholarship to go run track, but you probably understand at that point that it's like, all right, I was good or great in high school enough to get me here, but like when I get to college, you could end up being dime a dozen, and
mm-hmm.
you're realizing how much work it's going to require at that point to continue to grow and continue to get better. And like I look back at a lot of times in my life where I'm like, yeah, I'm burnt from this. And for me to do this for 4 more years in order to grow and get better, it's like it just seems like this insurmountable mountain that I don't want to climb, and I have regrets about that now looking back, 38 looking back on being like 16, 18, 21 about decisions that I made because it just seemed like I was burnt out and that I didn't
Mhm.
want to put more effort into something that I didn't know what was going to come of it. And I wonder if you have similar experiences like that, or even with the track where it's like, yeah, now that I'm an adult, and I've been through more than 18 years of quote unquote life, if my decisions would be different. Like the track decision as well, where it's like maybe that presents an opportunity for you and you weren't quite as burnt as you thought that you were.
Yeah. I think the one, after the Marines, I went to college for marketing. And I think I was still working part time, full time, something. I was commuting to school. And I was like halfway through my junior year, I was making what I thought was like good money for being, 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah.
And I was in the power sports industry. And I'm like, well, what else do I want in life? Like, this is what I want to do. Like, why am I doing
I've
all this
peaked.
thing? Yeah. So I dropped out with like, I think out of 120 credits, I think I had 95 credits towards my degree. Um, and that, not having that degree definitely burned me a couple of times. Like there was jobs like an East Coast rep for like Climb, which is like a off-road and snowmobile
Yeah.
gear brand. I interviewed with them to be their like East Coast Florida to Maine rep, and I couldn't get it because I didn't have the degree. So, and the
Yeah.
same thing like Polaris, I could have taken a job with for the same thing, like a regional sales manager or something. So those were a little bit of like kick in the pants, like, had you just finished that. But that was a life decision at the time. And I don't tend to regret or dwell. Like I'm very much like that's in the past. And like any
Mhm.
energy I can put in the past, I can double down on the future energy. So
It
I would rather
it
do
always
that.
it always seems that those like when you were making those decisions though, that you're in it and it seems as though there's no end in sight. And imagining sticking out the rest of those college credits, like I don't know how many times I was in college where I still have dreams. Like I had a dream 2 weeks ago that I had 1 quarter left. So Drexel was on
What?
quarters. I had 1 quarter left of college and I hated it so much that I bailed. And I was like, they're like, you literally have like three courses, 9 credits, 12 credits left that you need, and I still have dreams of leaving and not finishing my degree because I hated it so much. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just, it's the same thing. Like when you're in it, there's no end in sight, and like you cannot see it through, and it's really difficult to break that cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Especially, it's
graduated,
like
right?
I did, yeah, but like I
Yeah.
didn't want to, and
No, I
like
know, but like that was a long time ago.
yeah, but like
That's cra
I still will have
It's traumatized.
dreams like yeah,
yeah,
like shit like that where
apparently,
it's
man.
like I just hated it so much and I didn't finish. And people would be like, "What?" Like I didn't go to class and I didn't finish. To this day, I don't know why, probably stress and
Mhm.
anxiety related. Um, but yeah, I just feel like when you're in those decisions, it's really, and I think that that's the difficult part for kids as well when we want to be able to lead them down a path. And even my own kids where I'm like, "Listen, like you're upset about what's happening right now, but in the grand scheme of things, this shit does not matter."
Mm-hmm.
And like that makes perfect sense to me as a 38-year-old father and business owner, but as a kid, I can distinctly remember my mom saying that and being like, "This is really important to me though." And she's like, "It's not when you're my age, it's not going to matter." And like she was sure as hell right,
Mm.
but at that point, that's all that matters to you.
Yeah. I'm talking with that, like with my daughter's a freshman now. My son's in seventh grade, and I've had some honest discussions with my son. He's like had a couple like light girlfriends, and I'm just like, I promise you, the only fights you're ever going to get in high school and college are going to be because of a girl. It's not going to be
Yeah.
because of something else. So like, just stay away from the drama. Like for now, like I get it, but like after this, and my, daughter doesn't do the drama right now, but all her friends are dating and she just sees the mess that it comes with and the fights at school. And so I'm pretty like raw about it and just be like, yeah, this will cause you to be a real pain in the butt through high school. Just giving you a heads up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the transition into
Trades.
construction, yeah, where
Yeah.
where
So
did that come from?
one of my,
Like I really wanted something that would delay gratification more than
yeah,
I've
Yeah.
already I've already
yeah,
experienced.
yeah. One of my personal training clients' husbands is a builder in the area. And while my schedule was a little bit free um, with the gym stuff, so I just asked him, I'm like, hey, can I just work for you part time? Like, I'll give you 8 hours a week. You can pay me whatever you want to pay me. I really don't care. Like, I just want to like learn some of the stuff. So I started work for him 2 days a week, like between 4 hours. Sometimes I'd get out at noon and work from noon to whatever, or I'd give him an 8 hour day. And I just found myself more gravitating to that. Um, the other thing was I'm like a sponge for information in anything. Like I want to know how it all works, like this microphone, these things, like whatever that is. Um, so when I would go there, he'd like show me how to install a window or show me how to do this thing. And then the guy that I'd be working with would call out the next day and he'd be like, hey, can you put in the rest of these windows? Like, yeah, like you showed me how to do it. He's like, all right, cool. Or we were doing like a water table detail on the outside. And it was like a 22.5 degree bevel on something, another 22.5, and it had done a flat piece and 45 miters in the corners. And I was just kind of watching because I was just helping. And then same thing, guy didn't come in the other day, the next day. And he's like, hey, do you think you could finish that? And I'm like, oh yeah, it was 22.5 degree with this thing and blah, blah, blah. He was just like, yep. Like, okay. And so then he gave me a helper. He's like, hey, this guy, he's going to work with you. And so we put all the windows in the house. We did all this stuff and then started doing tile and all these. So, basically he was like, man, I'd love to keep you here. You're easy. He's like, I show you how to do it once and you just do it. So I did that for, I don't know, a year or two. And then the gym, I was in charge of the whole gym thing and all the finances and all the marketing and all the growth. And I knew the numbers that we needed to hit to make it work. And I just started keeping track of the numbers. And I went to the owner and said, hey, this financially, like I'm your biggest expense. I know we need to have 125 or 150 clients, on this rate with whatever. And like, it just doesn't work in our market. Like I don't have that many bodies. Like you had 3 people when I started this, running it. We've got 95 people. Like I'm doing my job. I'm doing the personal training. I'm selling the martial arts side. Like we're not bringing enough revenue in for you to be whole ever. And he's like, well, do you want to buy it? I'm like, well, hell no, it's not making any money. I
What a
can't afford.
move. What a move.
I'm like, no. So I'm like, you know what? There's no time like the present and like back to the relationships thing. Like I had all these relationships with clients from the power sports, clients from personal training and whatever, that I developed over 20 years. So I just said, you know what? I'm just going to do my own thing and just see how this goes. And that's where I'm like, I'm going to cater to everyone around the lake. So it was like, you need your jet ski with fuel in it. You need your, whatever you want, your heat turned on before you get here. You want me to go to the grocery store. You want me to do whatever. I really didn't care. I was just scraping. I think I had like $25 in my bank account. I really didn't care what it was. I had, one client would fly me to Florida and drive his car back with his dog in it. Like it just didn't matter.
How long ago was this?
2017.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
like had kids and were established.
Yeah, I had just gone through a divorce too, so that was fun. I was
Yeah.
living, I was basically not homeless, but I was renting for a little bit before I could figure out how to get into another thing. And that worked out fine. Like there's no harm, no foul there. The kids are great. their mom and I, we talk, it goes fine. But yeah, it was a difficult period. That was
You
along
don't have
this.
to convince us.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just a difficult time to figure out like, what the hell am I doing? I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do this thing. I was telling somebody the other day, like I was scuba diving in front of lake houses, cleaning sticks off the bottom of the lake and like taking them out in bags just because they wanted their beach cleaned for like when people came over on the island. So, and then it would be like, oh, can you, like, you can do that. Can you do this? Can you build a deck? Can you build a whatever? I'm like, yep, yep. And then it just morphed. And then I hired my first guy, I think in 2018, and he's still with me. It was like my first like $25,000 deck job, which I thought was, the biggest thing ever. My first year, I was like, I'd love to make $100,000. Like, what does that look like? And I think I'm
a quarter of the way there with this
grossed
deck.
$100,000. I had no idea like making $100,000 was totally different than grossing $100,000.
All I need is 3 more deck jobs this year and I'm set.
Yeah. So, and then it just turned into quality of work and my relationships with people and my attention to detail and it's a small area. And then a friend client gave me a decent sized job on the island, which we did great. We knocked it out of the park. Things are great. And then the word of mouth kind of spread. And then we continued to do things around the island and kind of set, ourselves apart from some of the people in the area. And then it kind of just has grown from there. Not as quickly as, we want it to, but it's going, So,
but
yeah.
How quickly can you hope and anticipate for things to grow when it wasn't like your business plan morphed into and your business itself morphed and adapted and evolved into what it is now, but it's not as though when you started this concierge type service that this was your goal.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct. Yeah. No clear vision, I guess you would say, right? And that's one of the things I'm better at now, the longer I've been in it. And I think it speaks to like things like Contractor Coalition Summit, where it's like the more information you have, the better your questions get. Yeah. And then the more directed you become. And now it's like, okay, I have a very clear focus on like where I want to go, what my number goals are, what a labor burden is, like any of those things, you know what I mean? And I knew what they were. It's like, how do I get the information to put that together? Because I knew like some of those things are key pieces in growth. It's what's a KPI? Like I went to school for marketing, not for business. So it was like all different things. We also grew too fast early and I made some really bad early decisions. I was up to like 10 or 12 guys and then I lost like 8 in a month. I'd bought new vans, new trailers, new trucks, and then COVID, and we were so busy up here. Everybody was like, "Oh, I'll just go be my own boss." And now I'm sitting on 2 new vehicles with a pile of work, and it was tough.
The whole like goal setting is something that also is just it's not utilized enough in our industry. A lot of like, especially like a lot of smaller shops, like we know we want to make $1 million this year. We want to do or $1 million in sales. It's like, what does that actually break down to? And I think that's where like the biggest hole in our industry is. And that's why I think things like our podcast, the summit, these other contractor meetups, like that's what everyone wants to know. How do I make more money? How do I become more successful? How do I do high? It's higher quality work, but higher quality work means like I'm going to be working with better clients. That ultimately, like how do I become more successful at what I'm doing? And you nailed it. Where it's like you got to set that goal and understand like what does that break down into?
Yeah, reverse engineer your year even is a big one. Like, oh, you want to make 500? It's like, well, then figure out what that is. I can like simplify it to my son started running track this past year. And he's like, oh, I want to run a 5-minute mile. I'm like, okay, divide that by a quarter or whatever that is. And it's like, can you run a 60-second quarter? No. I'm like, okay, well then you'll never get a 4-minute mile. Like can you run a 70-second quarter? Yes. I'm like, okay, then let's work on getting a faster quarter or a faster 100-yard dash. So equate
Right.
that to business. Like, if you want to make $5 million this year, then break down your quarters and figure out how much revenue you need per quarter. And then how the hell are you going to sell all that or build it? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
And it's,
I can sell all day. Like, how do I produce?
sure, but it's
Yeah.
also, we oftentimes, it's like the bank account. It's like, I'm not going to look at the bank account. It's like, well, then how do you ever know
Keep
like
score.
what how you're tracking?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's, at this point, it's like, if you're like, okay, now you're looking at it. It's like, has it changed? Has it stayed exactly the same? Does it continue to trend up? And without that information, it's like, how are you making decisions? And I say that like
100%.
though I'm speaking to myself, because for years, like, that's how I operated. I just was like, I'm just going out. I have to get this shit done. I'll figure it out later. I'll put a plan together later. Whatever. It's not like, it doesn't matter. And the reality is, it's like, well, I do have big goals, and it's, if I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
sit down and write that down and then figure out, like, okay, if that's what I want to do in a year, what does that break down into a month? And
Right.
okay, now I'm at the end. I'm halfway through month one. Am I trending in the right direction? And if I don't look at that, and I ignore it, I don't get to tweak anything.
100%.
The other difficult aspect of that is, like, when we're all starting our businesses, we know nothing about business. So even
Mhm.
armed with all of that information, we just don't know what to do with it. And I think, like, looking through your work experience, and obviously seeing that this is like a second or third career for you. And one of my questions for you was just like, why did you feel that you wanted to start your own company? Like, what were there not other options out there? Were you just the same as the rest of us, where it's like, well, I'm going to cap out in this field working for somebody making this amount, and this is going to be the best bet for me? Because I just feel like it is so hard, and there's such a learning curve, and we like to start a business, eh, without knowing how to run a business. It's not like it's your second business or your third business. Everyone's getting into construction and starting their own business, and it's the first time they've ever owned a business. And I feel like it's a very difficult industry to be in, even with experience. And then we're all just trying to make it work on our own small businesses. And like I said, even armed with the right knowledge and the right information, we just don't have the experience to know what to do with that in the first place.
Yeah. And I mean, I have those conversations locally too, because we're so fractured up here. Like, trying to hire people is difficult because, we can make the joke about, chucking a truck or whatever's going on, but it's hard to judge them for their decisions to want to be their own boss and make their own schedule, and whatever their definition of success is. If that means they just want to, work a 4-day work week and work 6-hour days, and they make enough money to, afford their life. I obviously, we're all more driven than that and have higher expectations for ourselves. But yeah, it limits the amount of people that are available to be hired to work for, say, like myself or Nick or one of the other local builders around here that are all looking for help. Um, I guess to answer your question, why did I want to do my own thing? I felt like I had worked for other companies for the majority of my life. And yeah, there was always a ceiling, like $18 an hour, $20 an hour, whatever that
Mhm.
is, that I thought was like amazing. And I think every job that I got recruited to do came with basically more pay. So it's like, oh, you're skilled enough to do this. And like, had I not ever made that move, I never would have known that what my value was outside of just doing that thing. And I don't view myself, do I love to build things? And, you know, yeah. Do I enjoy putting on a tool belt and carrying sheets of plywood and putting windows in and building some cool, like, finish detail stuff? Yeah. Am I at Tyler's skill level? Probably not. But I know I'm better at managing people and interacting with clients and keeping people happy and doing that dance, keeping track of the finances and self-improvement and education things. So, and I have attention to detail. Like I can see if something's wrong. And I think having a clearer perspective, sometimes I hate being the critical eye, because it's like all we do is walk into a job and pick it apart and be like, hey guys, like, I don't want that framed like that. Or, even today walking onto a job was like, hey, we should have put, zip R on that wall. It is the exterior wall of going into the garage. I know it's technically inside, but it's uninsulated. Like that needs to go on. And so pull those stairs off, fix that, do whatever. So yeah, didn't grow up in it, but I educate myself enough to know what's right and wrong. And I keep track of the codes and all the different things and just try to stay educated. And in the end, it falls on me, you, and like the buck stops with us, right?
Yeah. And
yeah,
I like the fact that the buck stops with me. And I think that most of us here probably do and like that accountability. And I think that there's something to be said for that. And that's probably why we are in the positions that we are. Like, I have a lot of trouble if I don't have full accountability of a project, it makes it very difficult for me and I think a lot of times it makes it difficult for other people because there's always somebody else to point a finger to, where it's like, well, this didn't turn out the way that it was supposed to because so and so was responsible for supplying that. And it's like, I would rather have that buck stop with me and not be able to hide behind that excuse and be like, hey, this is what they hired me for. This is what I'm getting paid for. I have to make this right regardless. I can't say, well, so and so was responsible for that. So that's not really on me. If you want me to fix that, I have to charge you this much more money, which I think is part of just business ownership in general. As far as at this point, it's 6-7 years that you've been in business, and I understand you're in somewhat of a unique geographic area, but
yeah.
what have been some of the challenges that you feel have been challenges that you didn't really anticipate or expect with starting your business? Because I think that when we start a business, we can foresee what the potential issues are, and there's some that are pretty straightforward. But what have you found challenging, whether it's due to where you are, or just due to the economy or whatever it may be, about starting your business, that just when you had the idea of starting a business, it never came across your plate?
I don't know that I ever imagined having the amount of employees that I have currently, and then what comes with that. Like I'm still yet to have a handbook with what days we actually have off. Everyone knows, like, I verbally say, oh, we've got 1 week of vacation after a year and 2 after 3, but perpetually it's like, hey, do we have Martin Luther King Day off or whatever day we're on? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Like, we have 4th of July, definitely. Let's close
What did we
from.
do last year?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
No, more days this year. So that's the groundwork that I have still yet to do. That's obviously important. The processes that we all discuss it's hard to get those done when it's so busy otherwise.
Yeah.
Like,
and this is because this is a hot topic for us right now, where we committed to documenting everything that we do and creating SOPs, and right back to delayed gratification. It's like, I open up the document, the shared document we have. It's like there's a handful of things in there. It's like, man, this is going to take forever. This is going to take forever. There's going to be a bunch of bullshit in here. Where'd Tyler go?
I don't know.
I lost
I
them.
don't know what happened. Where did they go? Give
I
me a
don't know,
second.
man. Yeah, no worries. But for those that aren't watching on YouTube, you should be. But Tyler just completely blacked out. Whoa!
Welcome
Ooh,
back.
that was cool. It was kind of like a
Quick change.
1980s music video where you were like green and purple for a second.
I don't know what happened. It just shut off.
That happened.
Timed
That
out.
happened to that happened to mine a couple months ago. But the reality is like, it's though, if you can dedicate to just doing documenting one a week, where it's like the reality of being able to do that is, that's pretty easy to
Hmm.
peel apart. And it's like at the end of the year, you'll have 52. And if you have 4 employees doing that, it's like, okay, now you have 208, and that's documented processes. And in 5 years from now, you're going to have this book. And
Right.
and I talked about this a couple episodes ago of one of my builders, and my Builder 20 group has this like 200-page how to build a house Word document that he's been putting together for 40 years. Please stop asking me for it because I'm not sharing it. I have signed an
I know.
NDA not to share
Yeah.
that. Not you, Chris, but like
No,
there's
I get it.
messages like, "Hey, do you mind sharing that with
No,
me?" I'm
no,
like,
no.
"I,
I
I
get it. I get
no."
it. Yeah.
But that's a perfect example. It's like, man, that document is super valuable.
Hmm.
So valuable that people are asking for it knowing nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Where like that and people are like, "I'll pay for it." It's like, it's not mine.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if I spend the next year, 5 years putting together my processes, like that's ultimately the goal. It's like I've been where you're at, where it's, hey, do we have this holiday off? How much vacation time do I have? And that's why I spent all that time putting the handbook together.
Right. Yeah.
Martin Luther King Day, like I didn't know that we had that off. And
Right.
it's like an email goes out. It's like, hey, just a reminder that we have this day off. It's like, yeah, we definitely do. It's in the handbook.
It's in the
And now
handbook.
and but forever, it's like these questions. It's like I remember, hey, can I wear shorts? I'm like, yeah. They're like, are you sure? Like, I think it's an OSHA violation. I'm like, I I don't know. I'm like, you know what? Fine. No, you can't wear shorts. You have to wear pants every day. And then I remember years go by. It's like, why can't we wear shorts? I'm like, I think it's a safety violation, so you have to wear pants.
I
And
feel
then
like
come
I
to find
think.
out, yeah,
Yeah.
I think we put it in the handbook because that's what we decided. Fast forward, it's like, no, it's actually not a safety issue as long as you're not doing like these tasks and you can wear shorts. But
Yeah.
I'm going on a rant here, but it's like the point is like these are the little things that kill our production, like kill your focus. Like you're trying to build the business, you're trying to refine the business, make it more profitable, hire guys, be a good leader and train people. And then you're getting asked like, what day, how much vacation time do I have? It's like, to be able to refer back to something,
Oh yeah.
is so valuable. And it's like, someone asked me recently, it was like, hey, how do I apply for a permit for Boston? It's a short form permit. I was like, yeah, I'll walk you through it. And I was like, wait a second, this is a great opportunity. So I just turned on my little Loom and I recorded the whole process and I just saved it as a video. I didn't clean it up. I didn't edit it. I just like, there you go. Like it's
That's
that
cool.
that permit's done. But next time you want it, just watch that video.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just going to keep doing this. And anytime someone asks me how to do something, it's like, I keep telling people, like everyone, like, hey, how do I do this? It's like, I've already told this person. Why don't you ask that person? But it's like, I'm just going to put it in one spot.
Well, yeah, and
So
I think
my point is like the delayed gratification, right? 5 years from now, I'm going to look back and be like, that's the best thing we ever did. Right now, it feels stupid and redundant and annoying and
Yeah. It's like,
frustrating. And
what's it going to take for me to be able to devote the time to this?
yeah, my team's like, where do I save this again? Like, where's that document again? Where's that? It's like, I know it's brand new and it feels like I'm just being an asshole by asking you to do more work, but I promise this is going to pay off.
Yeah, and I think it's part of your vision, though, right? Like if you, I think about this. It's come up a lot lately with 1099 or trade partners and things like. If you want to have a bunch of employees, we've got workman's comp and liability and health insurance and all the things that come with that, right? And then if you just want to, kind of maybe be your own worker with a couple people that you sub out for things, um, that when that company closes or the owner doesn't want to be in construction, bye Tyler.
Sorry, guys. I don't know
that
what's happening.
there's no
My
longer value in the business.
right.
It's going to close with it. So for you, like, if I understand you correctly, like you'll create all these things, and then hopefully, NS Builders one day is saleable, and it'll run itself, right?
Yeah, and I think that, for a long time I was like, I don't care. Like I don't care if I sell NS builders. Like that's not the end goal. But I do think the more I spend time thinking about business in general, the more I realize like you have to approach it that way because that's what creates value. Whether or not you're going to sell it, right? Say you
Right.
pass it on, like I pass it on to my kid, like my kid's not going to want a $0 asset. Like there needs to be an asset. And then the only reason it's $0 is because I'm not investing the little amount of time that it's going to take to build an asset over time.
Right.
And
And it
in our
frees you up a
industry,
little.
yeah, of course,
Yeah.
the more I do it, the more that gets documented, the more time I'm buying back. Because the
Correct.
moment someone says, "Hey, like, what's the holiday policy?" and I answer that, it's like whatever. That's a 3-minute answer. It's like, well, that 3-minute compounded over years and years, multiple times a year, that adds up. As silly as that sounds, it adds up, and you're able to attribute that 3 minutes to something else.
Right. Yeah.
But yet in our industry, it's the valuation of a business it's difficult. Everyone I've ever talked to that has sold their construction company or has passed it on to a partner or a kid, I've always asked them like, just be straightforward with me, like what was the valuation? And they tell me, I'm like, that's it. And it's like they're like, yeah, there's not much there.
Right.
Like we don't
Because you
we
can't.
don't have any processes. And I think that, bigger picture, I also think like our industry, and this is what I like so much about the Alaire model that we've had them on the
Hmm.
podcast, where it's, a franchise-ish model, but they have a centralized back end where it's everyone's doing the same thing in the back end. Where if someone wrote the book, if someone would say, "Hey, Chris, I wrote a book. It's exactly how to run a construction company. It guarantees you a 40% margin. And it gives you all the documents you need, all the software you need, step-by-step guide on how to start and run your business, how to hire people. It's everything that you need to run a business. And I'll sell it to you for $100.
Right.
It's like, or whatever, $10,000. Like there's value to it, and whether or not you implement it or not, it doesn't matter. The point is, it's like people want that because, as Tyler said, like we get into this not knowing how to run a business. We get into this with a passion, and then we try to figure out the business, and a lot of us fail at that,
Hmm.
and a
Or
lot,
or it's
and
expensive learning. One or the other.
or
Hmm.
it's expensive. Where it's
Yeah.
like if someone just said, "Hey, I know you want to do this. I know you're passionate about it. I know you enjoy this part of it. Let me hand you the piece that's going to be really challenging in hopes that it will prevent some pain in that process."
But the
Yeah.
other shitty part about that is definitely prior to social media and podcasts and Instagram and all of that, like there wasn't access to people who are
Mhm.
successful at this. And it's basically whoever's in your geographic locale that you can lean on to ask questions and field your questions. So most of the advice that you're getting is shitty advice, and it's like, "Oh, yeah, well, that's what we all do, right? We all
Yeah.
run around, it's all free estimates, and it's all,
Mhm.
yeah, you're gonna have to work after hours, and you go to the lumber yard before work and on your way home, and no, you can't charge for that." And it's like, where if you're to bring in some more professional business advice and standards, and I speak to a fair amount of people week in and week out, where it's like, let's look at your business and see like where your time management is and how much you're actually working each week and what you're accounting for in your billing and what you're actually charging for. And most people that I speak with, it's like if you actually look at how much you're working and what you're making, it's like the guy who tried to sell you the gym that's not making money. It's like
Right.
you're perpetuating this business model and conceding all of these hours to make it appear as if it's a profitable business. But if you took the personal, like if you took you out of this and you looked at this just at the numbers at face value, and somebody was like, "Hey, do you want to buy this business?" You'd be like, "Hell no, that person has to work 80 hours and they're coming home with $40,000 at the end of the year." And like that's who we're getting advice from, and that's who's telling us how to run our business and what we need to do for free, and the customer's always right. And it's like, I think that we need some better, more professional perspective and information in order to clean up our industry and make this a sustainable place for people to really thrive.
For 100%. And there's still local guys around here that will, see, I'll bump into them somewhere and I don't have a tool belt on and they're like, "You're not working. Where's your tool belt?"
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm
Banker's
going to look at a job."
hours.
Yeah, 100%. You look at jobs after work. I'm like, actually, no, I go during the day. It's fine.
I remember my first part-time job.
Yeah. And good for, if that's what they, yeah,
You must be union.
oh man. So yeah, I do have the conversation with my guys. Like, if we want to be professional and have a professional environment and consider ourselves professionals, like we need to carry ourselves that way. And it's, I probably spend too much money on clothing and hats and stuff, but it's like everybody's got, 5 black tie t-shirts and 4 hoodies and whatever, and jackets, raincoats and whatever. And our trailers are clean and like we definitely, we're not leaking oil in our clients, heated cobblestone driveway. Like go ahead and hire the cheaper guy with the rusted truck with the leaky oil pan. Like, but that's just not who we are. But that comes with some pretty high expectations and the guys know it. And we've been called out for things in the past. And it's like, we better learn from those and learn from them quick. Cause like word will travel fast. And it's in our area, it's very much about kind of always being clean, like dust control and, partitioning things and covering things. Like so many times it's just been like one bit of dust on a countertop or a dresser in another room. We've even learned like central air. It's like, okay, we need to be careful with that and put filters on the intakes or shut the system off during like whatever that is, because that has bit us in the butt. And it's like, okay, we need to do better at that. And we're not going to do that again. And just being in client's house that is, $4 or $5 million home at 7:30 or 8 in the morning when they're having coffee and breakfast and walking around, like you better have your shit together and not smell like a brewery or come to work like any of those things. Like we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard if we want to work with that client. And that's kind of, we've done a good job at doing that and we continually are trying to do better.
Yeah, I've always really lived by you get the customer you deserve and your customer gets the job they deserve. It's like you can't expect to land the jobs and keep the jobs and get the word of mouth referrals if you aren't walking the walk. Like what's going to come across your plate is deserved. And the same goes the other way, where I feel like if you're a good customer, you're going to have a good experience. And if you're a pain in the ass customer, you might not have a great experience. And it's just one hand washes the other in life and definitely in our business. But if you want those type of jobs and you want those type of customers, you have to play that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it comes with more responsibility on my interaction with the clients. I'm available via text and all the things. And sometimes, I've tried to do a better job. It definitely comes into my personal life where, why are you taking a text from a client at 8:00 at night? We're supposed to be hanging out with the family. And it's like, well, this is $1 million reno and they have a question with their heat not working currently. And it's the middle of December. Like, I'm actually going to leave right now because I want to make sure their heat's on, or like they're, they lost power. Like it happened to me like Christmas Eve last year. We were under renovation at a house, just put a new, like forced hot water system in, and they lost power and lost all their heat. And I was like, their house is going to freeze. Brand new heating system is going to burst. Like I just told the kid, I'm like, I got to go. So I grabbed a generator out of the garage and I ripped over to the thing and plugged everything in. And I'm like, called the client. I'm like, yeah, you're good to go. And like,
I think to speak to that specifically, because I think a lot of the argument comes up in conversation where it's like, no, I don't take calls or emails after hours. And I've said it too,
yeah,
but I want to clarify, because there should be some, like a standard, just like what's in a contract, what's on paper, what you're signing. Like there has to be a boilerplate. Like this is how we operate. We answer the phone from 7 to 5 and that's
right.
it. But there's the human side of it too, where it's like, yeah, someone reaches out and says, hey, you left your dustpan in my living room like at 8 o'clock. Okay, like just pick up the dustpan, put it away. I don't need to respond to this right now.
Yes. Right.
Versus, hey, I don't have heat and I know that the water's on and I'm afraid the house is going to freeze. You're not going to read that and be like, contract states you don't answer the phone after 5.
Yep.
It's like, well, you're about to be in a world of shit if you don't answer that phone. And that's like that's the part, like you know, same thing with a handbook, same with the process. Like you have to have a baseline. Like this is how we operate, but there's always going to be flux.
There's got to be judgment call.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
Yeah,
But
100.
that's the point. But you can't operate your business just from judgment.
No, and the other thing that screws you with that too is like there's times where I need an answer after hours if I want to be able to work the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to like be this hard ass with the customer. It's like I never respond to my phone after 5 p.m. And then it's like I really need an answer as to where you want this located tonight because the plumber's coming tomorrow.
Right.
And be like, oh well, it's 5. Wait, you don't answer your phone after work, but now you're texting me at 5:30 trying to get an answer from me. It's like
it's a one-way street, buddy.
Right? Like you can't draw a hard line in the sand all the time. It's good to have that baseline, but there has to be some flex there.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
I mean, I would argue saying that you should have had that information before that night, but
there's too many times where it's like, oh, did you make a selection? I need that selection. And it's like, how many times I just want an answer. And it's like, if I'm going to be a hard ass and I'm going to be like, well, I don't work after hours, but then I actually do. I want to leave that door slightly propped open. I don't want to shut that thing all the way.
Yeah. And I think that the prep, we know how that goes. Like you prep as much as you can. I have gone in the habit of trying to get every piece for it. Like we're doing a bathroom rental right now. And I'm like, okay, we're going to have all the tile. The vanity's already here. We're going to put it all in the trailer. We'll bring it all out at once. You can work right out of the trailer. Everything you need's there. I ordered the plumbing fixtures from my plumber a month ago. And then like end of last week, I'm like, hey, I need the linear drain. I haven't used this linear drain before. I want to see how it's going to work with the floor and all the things. Because they were on the fence with doing like 0 threshold or whatever. So then I call him like, hey, I need that linear drain. I need to check it out. All right, I'll get it. Let me call Webb. 2 hours later, hey, they never ordered any of that stuff. I'm like, what? Like we're ready to go. I've got like a 6-week deadline and you don't have like, they dropped the ball. I'm like, man, like that can't happen. And that's where like we talk about control and stuff. Like I would rather have just ordered it myself because I would have called every week.
It's the trust but verify.
Yeah.
And Brad actually, I think he told the story when he was in Austin, but he had that big, I forget if product. I'm just gonna say a big product order that he paid for, ordered. They got an order confirmation for, and they were ready. I think he said it was Windows, and they were ready for Windows. Brad, sorry if I'm just sharing more than I should, but the point was like the vendor was like, yep, they're ordered. They're going to be here on this date. That date came, went a month, like week go by. Hey, what's going on? Yep, they're coming. And it was like a month or 6 weeks later, they were like, hey, we got to be honest with you. We actually never ordered them. And he's like, what? And but point is like he talks about like, I've now just implemented. I have to verify.
Yeah.
Like there's so many process people, like humans involved in this stuff, is that like if one person skips a step, it's you're screwed. You have 6 weeks to get that stuff. It's like you put the trust in the plumber, wonderful. Like plumber's great. Yep. He called Webb. Like he put the trust in Webb. Well, that's 3 people right there. That third person was just like, whatever, didn't do it.
Yeah. I had a $20,000 learning experience this last project with Windows, and same thing, like sent it out to one window vendor rep and came back with a price. And then because it was a remodel, there was 2 different brands of windows involved. So I went to the other rep. I'm like, hey, I need, these windows priced and done whatever. And basically they just took the sheet from the other vendor and priced them, and then said, oh yeah, this is, what they are. So I took it at kind of face value, put it into my budget as part of pre-con, and then, signed the contract, moved forward, went to order the windows, and both window manufacturers missed. And actually, it falls on me if we were talking about extreme ownership. I assumed they did their jobs correctly, and we had, architectural drawings, we had, window call outs, we had everything. And then I sit down to place the order, and there's like 7 windows and a door missing. And I'm like, cool. Like, what do we do? Like, that's $20,000 that is not in my budget. And they're like, yeah, well, you should have checked it. And I'm like, well, you should have done your job. I'm like, nope, it's your fault. I'm like, cool. So I mean, those are when we talk about owning a business and learning, like.
And people wonder why. It's like, why do I have to document this? Why do I have to like confirm via email? Why do I have to put this in a submittal? Why do I have to put a stamp on it? It's like, because most of the time it's just most of the time it's redundant. But the one time that you miss 7 doors in a window or whatever you just said, like, that's the time that it matters. And it's not because I don't want you to take, like, I'm not trying to like paint you in a corner, but I need to know that, like, this is serious enough that you're going to take your job serious enough. Where it's, ultimately it's my job to verify, like, what you're pricing. Like, I'm pricing out a project, a bunch of material came back. I'm like, wow, that's really inexpensive. Is everything included? Yeah, it is. Great. And then I go and I do a little reference check on, like, talk to other builders that have worked with this vendor. I'm like, hey, hear really great things. They came in, their pricing looks great. What, any feedback? They're like, they're amazing. Just make sure you check their quantities. They're always light. I'm like, that would explain why they're so inexpensive.
So cheap. Yeah.
I was like, so now I'm going through and it's like, okay, now I got to verify all these quantities. And
it's the conversation that I sent you last night, Nick, where it's like, I ordered glass and I sent a picture to the glass company of, like, the edge detail that I needed, and, like, all the appropriate questions were asked, in my opinion. And then the glass comes in and there's, like, a different chamfer size on a square edge glass that's dependent upon where they source their glass from. And I was like, I don't know. I feel like if I sent you a photo of it, like, there's a million more questions I could have asked, but, like, at the end of the day, I sent a photo. Like, if that's what you do for a living and you're the professional, it would have been like, hey, I see your photo. It's a square edge. All different manufacturers make different chamfers on, like, this custom glass that was, like, for 2 pieces of glass was $1,000. It's not like a ton of money, but for 2 small pieces of glass, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just feel like they're in that situation. Like, if I was a glass company, I'd be like, oh, I need a drawing knowing what size these chamfers are, because if like, our glass company doesn't make them the same size, it's never going to match. And like, I didn't ask enough questions because I don't order this type of glass ever. And it's like, all right, so file that away for next time that I order 3/8. Like, I know what's happening to my camera. It just told me.
What did it say?
It's getting too hot.
Yeah, that happened to me a couple months ago.
I opened
that's
up
something
the
that's not
heater underneath my my desk, and it, like, blows up right to the camera. But yeah, like, that's the type of shit where it's like,
that'll never be in a handbook.
I know, but at the same time, it's like, I could ask more questions and I could follow up more and I could require more on my end. But it's like the verifying everything. Like, you can never ask enough questions. You can never verify enough. And it's very challenging.
Yeah.
The final note I want to make on that is there's also the side of, like, this glass guy, for example, has been accustomed to his client not caring about that.
Yeah.
It's just, and I've said this about trades in general, where it's like, they work for, 100 different contractors, and most of them just don't give a shit. Just get me the glass. Like, I need 11 by 48.
As long
Just
as
get me
it's
the glass.
clear.
Yeah, whatever. Like it's low iron, great. Plug it in, we're done. Oh, the chamfer's different. If they notice, who gives a shit? No one's gonna ever notice. And you get so accustomed to that process when Tyler comes in and he's like, that chamfer is 1/8 of an inch and this one's 3/32. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, it's a 32nd of an inch. It's like, yeah, but that was that's my standard. Like I need this to match exactly to the 32nd of an inch. Now it was bigger in the photo to
And
Tyler's
also,
defense.
it's like matching shelves that are already there.
Yeah. But
Oh,
So
right. Yeah.
so like the process is faulted on both sides where it's like, sure, Tyler could have done a drawing, could have verified
I
that.
could have more clearly articulated that they had to match what was here. Like,
And
but
he could and that vendor could have, asked the same questions, but it's the product of, they're not being forced to verify this stuff, but they're also so accustomed to working at a expectation level that is lower than
yeah,
someone like Tyler.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the really like difficult part to navigate where, you know, we the three of us have all experienced it when we ask something of our trades. It's like, hey, could you do this instead of can you do cast iron plumbing vents instead of PVC because I don't want to hear them. It's like, well, we could, but it's more money. It's like, yeah, I know. It's like, well, we've just never been asked that. Like it's not something that it's not a standard for us. It's like, I know it's not a standard. I would like to make it a standard for me.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Yep.
you want a higher level product. It's like, yeah, we used to do that in the beginning, but everyone stopped doing it because it was so expensive. It's like, right. And you've gotten so accustomed to that not being the standard anymore.
I think that's I mean, the learning thing. Like, what have I learned, or what's been? It's like realizing that nobody does anything the same. So
hmm
no, like
Yeah.
everybody, it's like, oh well, we frame this way, we do this way, we do, oh, you don't need a whatever. We do a hollow header, we do a solid header, we put foam between it. It's like there's no real. So then it's like, okay, what standards do you want to hold? Like, oh, I want to,
Mhm.
before we put seal down, I want to put caulking down. Well, we don't ever do that. Well, I want to start doing that. And then,
Right.
we don't use a laser on, this. Well, I want to use a laser on that. Well, I'm like, okay. So then over time, if you can use the similar trade, it's like, I've heard it, through the job site, like Chris isn't going to let that fly, or like, he's not going to like that. Just fix it, or just tear it out now. Cause if he sees it, it's coming out anyway. And like,
Mhm.
that takes a little bit of time. And like, nope, like we just know, I hired a couple new guys this late summer, and they were helping my guys do a deck job. And it's like, we don't, I say we don't, 99% of the time, we don't have butt joints in what we do. And I walked onto the deck, and like one of the breaks, perpendicular breaks, had a butt joint. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And my guy was like, oh, they don't know. Like, they just know
yeah.
we don't do that. Like, our SOP is we don't do that. So I'm like, okay, I'll order a new board, rip it out, we'll put a new one in. And it's like, now they know, like, we don't put butt joints there, or whatever
Yeah.
that is. And it's like, we just have our own, we have a certain way we do returns on stairs. Like, that's just, there's no other option. This is
Yeah.
the way you guys do it. Next.
And it sucks because it's like you teach those guys, they understand they'll never do it again. And you bring a new guy and he does it.
Yeah.
And you don't
And it,
Yeah.
remember that you have to tell them.
it's like,
Right.
yeah, I
Timbers on
forgot I had to tell
everything.
you that. Yeah, we've been doing this
Yeah.
forever. Where
I
it's
know.
like, I think it's I forget there's a builder out there that made this SOP book for like the way they do carpentry, hammer and hand or something like that. I forget. But it's a great, like, you read through and it's, hey, this is how we typically put casing together.
Right.
And we started like that. That's ultimately, yeah. I want to get our process down to the guys in the field. It's like, hey, when you're installing casing, this is how we do it. We always add a biscuit or we always add a domino. And it's
Mm.
like, and then eventually it's gonna get to a point where it's like, hey, we can't fit a domino here. It's like, all right, then add to that section where it's like, hey, if a domino doesn't fit, use a biscuit. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
now we're at a situation where like, hey, a biscuit doesn't fit on this casing. It's like, all right, well, what would be the best way to do it? It's like, I think we just do it with glue and just make sure we use a pressure, like a clamp under pressure. All right, add that to the section. It's like when you can't use either, make sure you glue it and put it under pressure for an hour, and
Yeah.
just and have this like evolve over time where eventually then you hire a new guy and he starts. It's like, hey, we're gonna be doing interior casing. Go read section 6 because it talks through all the way we do our casing. Like those are best practices. I'll update you if anything in the field's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where, like, that's where the value comes
Trying
in.
to
But
get
again,
to. Yeah.
it's over time. It's such a long collection of information.
Yeah. That's one of the things, and I try not to compare. Like, I'm always like, I've got a lot of friends, you guys included, that do really well in what they do. And I'm always like, I always want to, like, support their wins or applaud them for their wins. And it's like, it's not like, oh man, how did they get there? Like, but it is interesting when we're trying to grow and get somewhere, right? And you're just like, man, that guy's like crushing it. And then you're like, well, they have a 40-year-old handbook. Like, that guy's been writing stuff down for 40 years. Like,
Right.
and you have to take a breath and be like, okay, I've only been doing this for 10 or 6 or whatever that number is. And then you need to celebrate your own victories and be like, okay,
Totally.
we started here and now we're here. Do I want to do better? Yes. Like, but give yourself a little bit of grace to be like, okay, we're still doing really well. But yeah, to get to 40 years, like, I might not ever get there in my lifetime. So just kind of celebrate where you're at,
Chris, I
Yeah,
think
everyone has a different circumstance and different experience, and it's to compare yourself to what other people has is just like going to rob you of all your
Oh
joy.
yeah, for sure.
What'd you
I
say,
think
Nick?
I think that's a great way. Like, I think that's a great way to put a bow on this episode. Is
Yeah.
celebrating your wins, because it is something that is important. Where, exactly what you said, where you're comparing yourself to someone that's been documenting this for 40 years, and and we're in a world, as Tyler said earlier, it's like that we're exposed to so much. We're exposed to so many people. We're connecting via video on a computer right now,
Yeah.
sharing stories. It's like I've learned stuff from you, and vice versa, and Tyler and myself. We're learning from one another, where it's like the guy that's been doing it for 40 years, it took him 40 years to get there. And if when I sit down and reflect on what I've done to now, which has been 10 years,
Mm,
and talk to them about, like, what's 40 years look like. I'm like, I could get there in 20 years. I could get there in 15 years if I continue to stay on this path. And I have and if I think about the fact that if I do what I'm doing now 3 more times to get to that 40 years, I'm going to be in an amazing spot. It's like
right.
driving the
Yeah.
F1 car. It's like, yeah, right now I can't drive the F1 car.
Right.
Yeah,
But in
Yeah.
40 years of driving an F1 car every day, I'll be great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
it's
Well, good
true.
chatting, guys.
Yeah, Chris, I
Yeah,
appreciate
Chris.
your time,
Yeah, of course.
Good to
Let's do it
see you,
again.
man.
especially with
see
the kids having a half day. I just got a text that they have a 2-hour delay tomorrow too. I'm like,
At least you get a
damn it.
heads up and not. My phone rang this
Damn
morning
it.
at like 5:30 telling us the
Same.
kids were. I'm like,
Oh,
okay.
what?
Yeah,
No.
we
Couldn't
get a
told me
call
last
this
night.
morning, and like I guess Rachel must have had her phone somewhere else, so she's fully crawling across me in bed, like kneeing me. I don't like if I'm asleep and I know it's not time to wake up for work yet, I'm not picking my phone up. And she's just like a very light sleeper. And she's just fully across me, like kneeing me. And I'm like, their
I'm
school's
awake.
canceled.
You're awake.
Yeah,
Dick.
like the school's canceled. This is very unnecessary right now.
Yeah. But hard to plan. But all good. I know
All
you
right,
guys
dude.
got
Appreciate it,
a
man.
skedaddle.
Yeah, I'll see you up in
Yeah,
the
in the
snow
NH. Yeah, for
in
sure.
NH. Chris, I did not know that maybe he did tell me. I didn't realize he raced. You guys talking about dirt bikes makes me wish I had a dirt bike.
Yeah, you gotta
I was
get
always a
one.
4-wheeler. I had a Yamaha I know. I had a Yamaha blaster that I had all tuned up, and I had so much fun on that thing.
My one buddy had like a Banshee that he used to race, and he rides dirt bikes now. We always make fun of him that he used to ride a quad around.
Yeah. All right. Well, either way, guys, appreciate you guys listening. Make sure you head over to iTunes, drop us a review. We got IBS coming up. We're going to be out there on Monday. Our Summit series is actually going to be hosting an event, a meetup. If you guys want more info, head over to my @NickSchiffer account. I put the link there so you can register. I actually think it actually might be sold out. So I might be I don't know. Go check it out. If it's sold
next
out,
IBS.
shoot me a DM. But Tyler and I will be there. We got some speaking things to do. We're going to be hanging out at the show. Yeah. So, I mean, that's still a month away, but
that'll be here in no time.
No time. See you guys next week.
Adios.